The rotten oak in the bow is being replaced by teak. The process of restoration and replacement is unending. It's now reckoned that there's less than 10% of her original timber left.
The cost, as you can understand, is immense. There is no special budget for the Victory. The Victory is one of Her Majesty's ships in proper commission. The naval base commander here in this base, which is an operational and repair base for keeping modern warships operational and active at sea, has to find the resources and the workforce and the labour to do the Victory in between the times which is his principal duty, is to keep the main fleet at sea.
And so, in 20 or 30 years' time, we may see the Victory looking as Nelson saw her at the time of Trafalgar. We're now in Old Portsmouth, and fortunately a bit, if just a bit, remains on its seaward margin. All the forts and blockhouses commissioned by Palmerston in an earlier century to defend Portsmouth were rendered useless against the new warfare from the skies, and large areas of the city were destroyed by the German bombing raids of the last war. One such casualty was the old garrison church, the shell of which remains as a memorial to that time. Charles II married Catherine of Braganza in the church in 1662. But it was the Tudors, Henry VII and VIII, who established Portsmouth as home of the then infant British Navy. With the arrival of the Tudor dockyards, the fortified medieval town beside the sea took on a new national importance. From here, Nelson left for victory and death at Trafalgar, quitting his hotel by a rear door to escape the excited crowds. From the sea wall, you get a marvellous view of the wide expanse of the harbour entrance. And I imagine lads fished from here in Tudor times. Traditionally, 4 towns make up the city. Portsea, where I arrived by ferry, Landport, Old Portsmouth, and the fun quarter of the city, Southsea. It's been said of Southsea that it helps if you like your fellow humans, because there's a lot of them. In the 19th century, a fashionable suburb, it's now very much trippers, candy floss, bingo, and of course, the seaside. Now, something you really shouldn't miss, no really, is the old sewage pumping station at Eastney. It really is marvellous, a great cathedral dedicated to sanitation and hygiene. It's all burnished brass and glistening steel. They're beam engines by James Watt of London, and you really could eat your breakfast off any part of them or the surrounding platforms. It's spotless. The engines were installed in 1886, and during summer weekends, they steam up one of them so you can see it in action. The truth is that the arrival of a decent sewage system for Portsmouth came not a moment too soon, as indicated in a report by the General Board of Health into the sewage and drainage of Portsmouth, 1850. The island of Portsea was one huge cesspool, for there could not be less than 16,000 cesspools, daily permitting 30,000 gallons of urine to penetrate into the soil. It had percolated into that well which ought to have supplied the inmates of the house with pure water, so that they were daily in the habit of drinking in a dilute form their own secretions. Cholera was king in Portsmouth, and there were recurring and serious outbreaks. Small wonder that the opening of Eastney pumping station was given such a welcome. In 1887, a grand ceremony attended by the mayor and local dignitaries to open the new sewage pumping station. A plaque was erected, and the dignitaries then trooped outside to watch sewage being pumped into the sea. They then repaired for speeches and luncheon to Portsmouth Lunatic Asylum. The proceedings went on till 5:30, when the participants, we read, doubtlessly left happy at the prospect of being able to use their new drainage system. And the 250,000 gallons of sewage an hour were pumped here to Langston Harbour, timed to coincide with the outgoing tide. No sign of that today. My next stop is just after Langston Bridge, which joins Hayling Island to the rest of Hampshire. Now, how about that for pretty as a picture? Langston Harbour, you'll see no big boats here because it's so shallow. Although when the tide's in, it's a very popular place for windsurfing. A peaceful spot, and the Royal Oak pub's a good place to break the journey. Well, the end of the journey, Emsworth, is in view. And as an urban kind of bloke, I'm really rather pleased with myself. I mean, that's 61 miles, and I've walked every mile of it, haven't I? Well, that's not strictly true, but sometimes it's felt like it. On your way out of Langston, you'll pass Langston Mill, originally a working mill grinding corn, and converted to a private house in the 1930s. You can only arrive here by car at low tide. Most of the time, you'd need a boat. A superb view of Langston, looking back from flat meadowlands on the way to Emsworth and Journey's End. The natives are friendly. At this point, the path leaves the coast and you head inland for a bit. Who would think that busy roadways full of snarling traffic are but a stone's throw away? Ah, there's something about the English countryside in summer that uplifts even the jaded, unfit walker like myself. Happily, the Solent Walk takes you past Warblington Church, originally Saxon, and a slight detour takes you into the churchyard itself. There's always something of interest in churchyards, and in the case of Warblington particularly so, since it contains a massive yew tree, 26 feet in girth, and believed to have been here since Saxon times.
Yeah, they reckon that yew tree is 800 years old. At one time it was a bit poorly, so they packed the core with cement, which you'd think would have killed it, but it looks pretty healthy. Good for another 800 years. You often find yew trees in graveyards, but nobody quite knows why.
Another of the notable features of Warblington churchyard are two stone huts, thought to be unique. Each hut housed a man.
How's this for a job? Sitting in a hut in a graveyard at night. The job to prevent body snatchers from providing newly buried corpses for eager medical students. And if it was a very cold, bitter night, I suppose you could have ended up a corpse yourself. Fancy that? Ah, the good old days.
On my way out of Warblington, a ruined tower, all that remains of moated Warblington Castle, home of the last of the Plantagenets, and demolished by Cromwell's troops in 1643. The end of the journey, Emsworth. Emsworth was once known for oyster beds and corn milling. The millers and oysters have gone, and Emsworth now is just another haven for sailing craft, and a rewardingly pretty place to visit. It is also, of course, the end of the Solent Walk, which began on Hurst Spit near Milford-on-Sea. Now, if you're keen, really keen, you turn around and do the whole walk all over again, in reverse. Me? Well, I shall inspect the local architecture, and that just might include a pub. In short, one of the great walkers of the late 20th century bows out.